Hi, I'm Mike. Record keeping on the ranch is essential, and today we take a look at ways to keep track of your herd, no matter the size, and why you should do it on our Wyoming Life. Number 6 here is the oldest pregnant cow on the ranch. She's 12 years, 7 months old. Over her lifetime, she's had 11 calves, including one set of twins in 2013. Her last calf was born on April 8, 2017. Her average calving interval is 362 days. Postpartum interval averages 77 days. She has created $7,476 worth of income for the ranch, and in April of 2014, just 12 days before she gave birth to a bull calf that weighed about 75 pounds, she twisted her ankle and limped around for almost an entire month while it healed. And this year, she's due in early June and probably having another bull calf. So let's hope that she watches where she steps this year. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us once again as we continue to explore the ranch life and escape the ordinary. If you'd like to take the ride with us, take a minute and subscribe. Be sure you hit the bell button and turn on notifications so that you know when a new video comes out. And if you don't mind, hit the thumbs up button. That helps folks find us and start their own journey into the ranch life. On the ranch, there's a ton of stuff worth keeping track of, from rainfall to oil changes to grazing records and water tests. But one of the biggest record-keeping tasks that has to do with the cows. That's when it all comes down to. And you get past the romantic images of sunsets and snowfalls and cowpokes moving their way across the plains, and ranching's just a business. It has been since the very first cow was domesticated, and the first cowboy or cowgirl figured out that her time was worth something. From that day forward, cattle records became a tool that cattle producers used to increase the productivity, safety, and efficiency of their herds. Unless you only have a few cows, it's hard to remember who had twins last, or the date the cows were exposed to the bull, or who even had a sore leg or hoof and who needs a special eye kept on them for a few weeks, a few days, or even years. The first ranchers kept records on their walls, depicted as paintings, showing the best bull to breed to and cows that gave the best milk. Over the years, that evolved as well, and cowboys moving herds of cattle across the Great Plains had to know how many they left the ranch with and how many they had left when they got to Kansas City or summer pasture. But even then, it was just about the herd and not so much about the individual cow. In as early as 1895, ear tags were used in breed identification only in the United States. Canada began using them in the early 1900s to identify cows tested for tuberculosis. But it wasn't until the mid-50s and the advent of the two-piece self-piercing ear tag that we began tracking individual cattle more closely. And I imagine it was then that cattle producers started figuring out how important those records could be. Gilbert, my father-in-law, was already a cattle producer at that time. And the great thing about Gilbert was that in many ways, he was stuck in the 50s, at least technology-wise. And up until the day he passed, he always kept a majority of his cattle record keeping on something every rancher always had with him, his checkbook. Well, the cover of it, actually. And it was on that piece of cardboard that Gilbert could tell you how many calves had been on the ground so far, how many cows were still waiting to give birth. He'd write down cows that needed medication and even cows that he didn't like, and I figured that he needed to get rid of. Also on that checkbook cover was about 50 phone numbers and a good dose of tobacco juice from the chew that he perpetually had in his gob. When Gilbert passed away, I went through a lot of paperwork and checkbook covers to try to make sense of the herd that he left us. Then, having come from the corporate world, I dove into Microsoft Excel and started making sense of it all. I ended up with a spreadsheet, well, lots of spreadsheets, and what could only be described as a mess of numbers, dates, and ear tags. At some point, I took what I had and I used it to help me start over. I started with the IRM Red Book. That's actually put out by the NCBA, or the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. While I don't agree with them on everything, I will say that I agree on record keeping. And if you need a simple way to keep track of what is going on with your herd, it's a great way to do it. It's a pocket-sized book with more than 100 pages, all designed to help you keep track of calving activity, pasture usage, and all kinds of good stuff. You can get it on the NCBA website, and I think it costs right around $7. I used one for about a year, but each year you need a new book. And if you wanted to track a cow over her entire life on the ranch, well, you could be digging through little red books until all you see is red. So I went back to my spreadsheets. I took all the information from the little red books and I plugged them in. Then I figured there had to be a better way to do this, and I started testing programs that help producers keep track of their herds. I downloaded every app that I could get my hands on. I tried every single one, but the one I settled on was called CattleMax. Now at that time, I think it was 2014, they had a program that you downloaded and it lived on your computer. You still had to take a notebook or something with you to write on to keep track of what was going on in the field. Although you could print calving sheets that were handy along with inventory sheets to keep track of your herd. Then you had to bring that all back home and enter that in the computer. Who calved that day, any other information you wanted to track, preg checking, branding, whatever you were up to. But things did get better. I think it was in 2015 when CattleMax switched to an entirely online system. To be honest, I thought it was the dumbest thing I'd ever heard. All my cattle information was now online. There was no program on my computer anymore, and it just kind of felt a little weird. Over time, I've gotten used to it, and now I use CattleMax for all our cattle record keeping needs. All of my information is in one place, accessible across any computer, tablet, or even phone. I have everything I need to know about my entire herd right at my fingertips, and that's the way I like it. CattleMax has two programs, one for commercial herds like ours and one for registered herds, and the amount of information you can pull up at a moment's notice is incredible. Pricing is as low as $9 a month, and you can get a 21-day free trial anytime. In fact, I'll put a link to their website down below and you can check it out for yourself. I do wish they had an app, but maybe that's coming someday. For now, you have to log into a website, which means that you have to have internet to make changes or edit your information. However you choose to keep track of your records, I urge you to figure out a way to do it. Over the long run, having certain information will help you manage your cattle, sheep, horses, water buffalo, goat herds, whatever. You'll handle them better, safer, and more efficiently. There are certain things you want to make sure that you keep track of, and that starts with inventory. Know each of your cows by number, your breeding times, your calving times, and your cost per cow, and that provides a benchmark to build everything else off of. In addition, keep track of your pasture usage. Document when a pasture is used each year, how many cows are there, for how long, and even precipitation rates. That'll give you a better stocking rate and better stocking rate numbers that pertain directly to you and your pastures. You can also use your cattle records to keep track of input costs, know how much each cow is costing you in feed, medical costs, depreciation, and labor, and then keep track of income. This includes bulls, steers, all your calves, and even your cows. You can also use your records to keep track of feed costs, which can dictate how many cows you can actually carry over the winter. Here on our ranch, well, we've taken this year to reduce our herd size. Feed costs are rising. We had hail that took out a good portion of our hay crop, and we had aging cows. After preg checking, we decided to sell almost all of our empty cattle, and we still had to make sacrifices. We figured out how much hay we have on hand to feed our cows over the winter, and because we're expecting a hard winter, we figured in a buffer to help sustain them into calving. And we reduced our 150 cow herd size to exactly what we expect to be able to feed this winter: 113 pregnant cows. Without tracking and keeping track of our herd, our grazing situation, our hay production, calving rates, calving times, and about 50 other factors, we'd have a lot harder time knowing how to manage our business. The hope is that this spring we can buy some bred heifers, build the herd back up, and, well, even get some new blood even. And then add them to our ever-growing database of numbers, facts, and figures that seem to some, well, just the same way Gilbert's checkbook cover seemed to me. Just a complete mess that I didn't even want to touch. But now I know that the more you know about the past, the better prepared you are for the future. But it does you no good unless you can find that information about the past. Thanks for joining me today. We're heading into the time on the ranch where things start to, well, they settle down a little bit. Cows get fed daily, and we enjoy the calm before the storm. And we can get a lot done around the ranch and right here in the shop. Please subscribe, find us on Facebook, and live the ranch life through us on our Wyoming Life.